All right, greetings, everybody. We continue with selections from the HaChaim on Parshas Hashavua, and like we promised at the beginning of the week, we're going to unpack Yaakov's wondrous dream, which came out to be nothing short of prophecy, and what it represents through how the HaChaim does so. Today's session is particularly densely packed with Kabbalistic concepts, but Kabbalistic concepts every Jew should really be aware of. To understand the power of a Jew, the power of a Jewish neshama. A lot to unpack, so this one will keep you busy for the whole Thanksgiving Day weekend. A lot to say over, a lot to discuss, a lot to internalize. And of course, like every installment of this series, it's all lezchut, lרפואה, שלמה, לאריאלה, רינה, אסתר, בתושח, שלמה, תקפו מיד. Okay, so Yaakov sees Sulam Mutzav Arza, Barosha Magia Shamaima, Vine Malchel Kim Olim Viyordim Bo. Right, there's a the ladder. Angels go up and down the ladder, and Hashem is on the top of that ladder. Right, a lot to unpack over there. So says the HaChaim, that's Sulam, and a lot of this he knows from the Zohar and from the Kubalim. He's just threading it through the pasuk. It says that Sulam represents the neshama. The neshama is mutzavar, so it's in the body on the one end of it. But Rosho Megia Hashamaima, right? It's still, it extends all the way up to heaven. It extends all the way up to heaven. Even though part of it is in the body, it never stopped being in heaven. And even when a person is asleep, like Yaakov, case in point, and the neshama is freer to, kind of the shackles of the body are loosened, right? So it still doesn't depart from the body, right? And he brings a simple proof. The neshama doesn't depart from the body, because you could shake a person, shake his body of a sleeping person, and he'll wake up. All right, so the neshama doesn't leave, and the link remains. But since the neshama is freer to drift to heaven, so what can you have if you're asleep? When the body is put a little bit, the body is subdued. Prophecy, and that's V'Hashem Nitzav Olav. Right, the neshama never stops being a heavenly being. Right, it still is connected to heaven. The body interferes a great deal because it's connected to the body also. Go to sleep, and the body, the interference of the body is mitigated, which all prophets need to be either asleep or in a trance, except Moshe. Moshe has purified his body. His body doesn't get in the way, but that's beyond the scope of today's topic. Moshe is just different. But everyone else, the neshama never stops being heavenly, even though it's in a body. Just the body interferes a great deal with the Yetzer Hara. But if the body is subdued, like you're asleep or in a trance, you could get prophecy. But here's the amazing thing, says the HaChaim. It is natural for a Yid to be a prophet. You have a Jewish neshama that reaches all the way to Shemayim. Right, so you've got that line of communication to Hashem Nitzav Olav. Hashem is on top of that ladder. You've got that ladder. Right? Just you muck it up with your bad midas and averos that you do. You get that out of the way. You could have nevuah. Right? It is natural for an adam for miyisrael, an adam miyisrael, a yid to be a navi. This is something already the Rambam wrote in Shimon Prakim in particular, that if a person would clarify, purify his midas, he will get to nevuah. And that's really the famous brisa of Pinchas ben Yair that the homeless Sharm is based on. With the Torah, maybe they zeros, maybe zrizos. And then Kedusha, maybe lidei Ruach HaKodesh. When you finally reach the midah of Kedusha, you get Ruach HaKodesh, you get divine inspiration. It is natural for a Yid to be a prophet if he just refines his character. Right? That's an amazing thing. We all have this sulam. Now that's part of what's being revealed to Yaakov. He's going to be fitting of prophecy, and is also the legacy for his children afterwards. You saw him lav neviim heim b'nei neviim heim. That's why I said what we do sometimes as a group, if we're on a low level, but what we do as Klal Yisrael taps in, at least collectively, to our capacity for Nevuah, as was the case with Hillel Zaken, and the question of how you bring the knife for the Shechita when, Erev Pesach comes out on Shabbos. Okay, so that's lesson number one. The Sulam is the Neshama, which Mutzavarta on one hand it's in the body, but Rosh Omegia Shemaim can reach it all the way up to heaven to Vashem Nitzavalav, to the point of prophecy. Right? Amazing thing. Right? And I should say also that Rav Chaim Vital wrote a sefer called Shari HaKedusha. The book is How to Attain Prophecy. And he says this same principle. It's natural for a yid to be a prophet. It's the bad midas that get in the way. And the whole book is a Musar sefer. It's there's very little. I mean, in the end, there's some Kabbalah, but all of it. But the Kabbalah is there just to prove this point, right? That it is natural for a Jew to be a prophet, as a Jew has this neshama that's sulam mutzavarta b'rosha megia shemayav Hashem nitzavolav. Okay. B'nei malchei Elokim olim v'yordim bo. What is that? Says the HaChaim HaKodesh, right? That the Malchei Elokim Olim, the Olim, right, are referred to your mitzvahs, right? Amazing thing, you do mitzvahs on earth, and they reverberate in heaven. Now he references, the Mishnah in Avos, that everyone who does a mitzvah, karlo praklit echad, every time you do a mitzvah, you've acquired a defending angel, because the mitzvahs produce angels. They produce ruchnius forces that climb. Right, an amazing thing. They climb, and you understand. Nefesh Chaim doesn't. He expects you to connect the dots yourself, because even though the mitzvah is just a physical action, right? But you do the mitzvah with a neshama. Right, and the neshama, like we said, is, even though it's mutzav arta rosh megia shana, so since there's the power of a neshama that reaches heavenwards in the action of the mitzvah, therefore the mitzvah, becomes an angel that goes all the way up to heaven. Right, because and of course that's only because we do mitzvahs with our neshama, not just with body. We do mitzvahs with that sulam that causes the mitzvah to not just be a physical action, right? Right, but it's it becomes an angel that climbs. So the malachim olim are your mitzvahs, right? The malachim yordim, right, is that it gets a response from heaven for everything that we do on earth. Hashem responds. Right? So if we do good and we increase positive, Hashem responds and gives us our just reward. But our just reward is like to also respond. You made the world better from below, sending influence up. Right? I'm going to send down new shefa from top down. So the malachim yardim is the shefa that Hashem sends down in response to our mitzvahs, which benefits the whole world, but it primarily benefits the person who did the mitzvah, right? To begin with, so he is the prime beneficiary, but of course, a spillover effect to the whole world. So that's the Malchei Elokim Olim, are our mitzvahs that we do with the power of the neshama. The power of the neshama is infused in the body on earth, sulam mutzav arta, because you have a neshama in the guf. That the neshama dimension of your mitzvah causes this physical action to become a malach that climbs up. The malachim that climb down again is how Hashem, responds and gives you shefa in return, for you and the whole world. Right, so it climbs right back down the rungs of the ladder, and of course that's why you're the prime beneficiary. Of course, the whole world benefits, right? But it's going to climb down the rungs of your ladder, so of course you're going to be the first to benefit, right? It'll climb back down your neshama, and from there to the whole world, right? So he invokes a Kabbalistic concept that it's important to know that there's mayim nukvin and mayim duchrin. right? That all our mitzvahs are called lahalos mayim nukvit, to bring up the feminine waters. Right? The waters were all once all one. Then Hashem split them on the second day of creation. It was Rakia b'Sochamayim, and then subsequently he pushed those lower waters even further under earth, and we have to merge the waters again, as it were. So the waters that we bring up from below, called the spring waters, the waters that come up below, why they're called the feminine waters is too complicated to explain right now. But the waters that we bring up from below, that's our mitzvahs and our maisim tovim, get a response of mayim duchrim, right, of the male waters, which is represented by rain. It's represented by rain, right? Rain is a mushal for it and a certain manifestation of it, but it's the waters that come from above. So the Malchei Elokim Olim is the Mayim Nukvin, right? The mitzvahs that we do, right? They climb up the ladder, which is your neshama, right? And that's why they could climb up. That's why your mitzvahs get converted into angels, because it's done with the koch of the neshama. That is a sulam that reaches all the way up heaven. So that's our mitzvahs. And then the shefa that Hashem gives in response, right? The blessings and added spiritual energy. He matches you. Whatever you contributed to the cosmos, he'll match you and give you that and more from top down. That's the Malchei Elokim Yordan. Right? Right? Very, very big principles about the power of the Jewish neshama. So now we'll just add to this what the Nefesh HaChaim says. The Nefesh HaChaim comes in a very similar angle. All this is inspired by the Zohar. In this week's Parsha, and other places, the Zohar, comments on this dream and says these Yesodis. The Nefesh HaChaim actually goes very parallel to your HaChaim. They were both called Chaim, but they lived about 2 generations apart. Or Chaim was Moroccan, Rav Chaim Ibn Atar, and Rav Chaim Volozhner was the Talmud of Vilna Gaon that started Volozhner Yeshiva about 2 generations later. All right, so in Shar Alf of the Nefesh HaChaim, he also comments on this dream of Yaakov, and he totally agrees, totally in accordance, because it's all, after all, a Zohar, that the Sulam, right, is the neshama of the Adam. But you know what he says? He says it could be taken literally. It could be taken literally. Malchei Elokim Olim v'Yordim Bo could even be taken literally. The angels, like Michal, Gabriel, Raphael, all those guys, right? Our mitzvahs affect the angels. Our mitzvahs, we're the ones that change reality. A malach, they're called omdim, right? In the right in Tanakh, that the malachim are called omdim. It's possible in Zechariah, the arm is called a holeh. He walks. He progresses. The angels are called they stand. They're locked in their position. In the Torah of reality, every angel has their function. They're locked into their function. And that's the secret also of what we had in Rashi just a couple of weeks ago, Parshas Vayeitzei, right? Ein malach oseh shtei shlichus, right? Malach can't do two different types of things. Raphael only does refuas, Gabriel only does gavuras, right? Everyone, they're locked into their function. They're locked in. They are forces of nature. They are God's messengers that are really they administer the forces of nature, just like the forces of nature are set. Gravity only does what gravity does, and it won't change from what it does, right? All the laws of nature just do what they do, and they have their place, and thank God for that. That gives stability to the world. The root of all that is the angels that are behind these forces also are oimdim. They just stand where they are. The Adam is the Hailech. The Adam is the one that moves, right? But you can move in the right direction. That's what you do mitzvahs with your bechira, your boicher. You're self-propelling and you navigate in the positive direction. You go in the right direction, or God forbid, you go in the wrong direction, right? We change the world, and we change the world because we're not locked in to where we are. And you understand why. Because we have in ourselves a neshama that sulam mutzav artzav rosho megia shemaima. We have a neshama that that part of it is in the body, right? And most of it is not even here and transverses, right? All the different realms of reality. So what we do, we send vibes with our mitzvahs. We send vibes, and it cuts through every place the angels are. It cuts through them, right, all the way up to Hashem, right? Give you a whole. So, we. So says the Nefesh HaChaim, a frightening thing. Malchel Kim Olim Yoro, through the deeds of man, because we have this neshama that's multi-dimensional, that cuts through all the different layers of reality. That's what makes it that we're not stuck in one place. We have a neshama that's everywhere, cuts through all the different levels. That's why our mitzvahs reach from earth all the way up to heaven, and it makes changes all the way up. And we could benefit the angels and raise them, or God forbid, when we do our verse, we know we ruin the world. Famine, right? Disease, all types of bad stuff happen. There's a science to it. There's a science to the mida connected mida, right? We send bad vibes, God, with our virus, and it affects these angels, right? It affects them, it damages them, it causes them to go down. And let's say the angel that's in charge of rain, you bring them down, it's a famine. There's a drought, it doesn't rain, right? You push around the angel that's Mamun Alamayim, that's when there's flooding. Yeah, climate change is real. It causes it a virus. A virus causes climate change. Right? It's not happening fast enough. All right, that's another schmooze. Because the world has to be flooded with water by the year 6000. But you could ask me, direct message me or ask me about it in shul. Right, but climate change is real. We're the ones who cause it, not because of our gas engines, but because because of our affairs, right? So that's Malchel Kim Olim V'Yordim Bo, because we have this sulam that transverses reality. Whatever we do affects all these angels that otherwise would be stable and stay in their place. We cause them to go up and increase their power. If we do mitzvahs, we're the ones who cause them to go down. If God forbid we do our verse, we bring them down. The angels mitzad themselves would just stay where they are. We're the ones who cause aliyah with our good deeds and optimize reality and make it a better place. We're the ones who cause yerida with our bad deeds. God forbid we affect the angels that are the ministers of reality by Hashem's command. Okay, by Hashem's command, they're the ministers of reality. They don't have any free will, and they're not even self-propelling. We push them around with the vibes that we send up this sulam mutzav arts of Rosh Megia Shemaima. And just add one more thing from Nefesh HaChaim, right? That this is the secret that the angels don't say their shira. They don't say Kadosh, 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 and Baruch Kavod Hashem Imkomo until we say it on earth. Until we say it on earth, they don't say it in Shemai. Says Nefesh HaChaim, you know why? Because angels are stuck where they are. The eating of Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvakos, that Kedusha is that, talking about Aliyas HaOlamas, causing the universes to kind of not converge, but interact with each other, right? For the purpose of bringing Shefa down, right? First we have to raise them up, Kadosh, to Parshas to elevate, and then Baruch Kavod Hashem, then Bracha comes down. We're very parallel to what the actually perfectly parallel to what the HaChaim said about Mayim Nukvim, first raise things up, and then the Mayim Duchim come down. And that's Kadosh, 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 Aliyas Olamas. That's why we stand on the tippy toes, we're raising things up. And then, Baruch Kavod Hashem Imkomo, right, is to bring down Bracha from that. Okay. But angels can't do that. They're not trans-dimensional. They're omdim. They're stuck where they are. Amisol could do that. But since that's what that shira represents, they get the call to say that shira from us, because that shira is trans-dimensional. Right? I'll just say something else that also has to do with this week's parsha. Once we're talking about angels and how they're omdim and how they're stuck where they are, and they're not inclusive of anything other than themselves and the particular job that they have. So Aramit comes up in this week's parsha, right? Aramaic, Lavan Arami. And then the Marsha and the Megillah says Jews always spoke Aramaic because that's what Rachel and Leah spoke. So they spoke it to us. That's why even in Egypt, we spoke Aramaic. That's why Targum Onkelos, the basic rudiments of it were given at Sinai already. Jews always spoke Aramaic. And in my book on Bereshis, I have a piece on this, one-way universality. All right, so we know angels don't understand Aramaic. So, of course, the ministering angel of France, hopefully he's not a pervert like the French, right? But he understands French, right? All right, then the ministering angel of England, hopefully he's not a rabid leftist Islamist like the British, but he understands English. That's his ministry. Okay, so he understands that language, right? And they all understand Hebrew, right? The holy language, but they don't speak Aramaic. They don't speak Aramaic. And this kokim l'lashon Arami, the angels will not deal with a prayer said in Aramaic. Why is that? Says the Maharal. Because the thing about Aramaic, which is the secret of why Jews grabbed on to Aramaic, we've always been speaking Aramaic. Aramaic is actually a universal language that blurs the lines between Kodesh and Chol. It's Miksaso Kodesh, Miksaso Chol. That's what's unique about Aramaic. It's very close to Hebrew, and it blurs the lines between Kodesh and Chol, and that's why Lavan, that's what cheaters do. They blur lines. So Lavan uses the power of Aramaic Lara. We have to use the power of Aramaic Latov to blend Kodesh and Chol in a good way, and that's all the secret of that wall. The wall between Yaakov and Lavan. He wanted to make a separation. Because Lavan says, that's a secret. Lavan bikesh lakor sakol. He's uprooting it. How do you want to uproot it? It wasn't going to necessarily exterminate his own daughters and his grandchildren, but he wanted to make them all Arameans. He says, they're all mine. You guys, this thing about this starting a separate nation called the Jews, you're all mine. Right? And that's why Yaakov makes the wall, to separate, segregation. Lavan tries to overcome the wall, right? And by giving it an Aramaic name to make it a porous border, right? Porous border, like the border to the north with Canada, like the border to the south of Mexico, porous border, right? And that's why Yaakov comes back, gives it Dafka a Hebrew name, right? But what's Rashi say from Chazal? That you don't cross this barrier l'ra'ah, but you do cross the barrier for trade, for pragmatia. Now, we need Aramaic for our universal side to be mashpia to the whole world, and that's the secret that the world exists on Kedusha the Sidra. Since we don't have the base of Mikdash anymore, I can't get into this. There's too many secrets to be revealed all in one shot. But Kedusha the Sidra is what keeps the world going, because since it's said in Aramaic, it becomes universal, right? And that's, we have a universal side to us to be mashpia. It's very apropos that we're talking about this on the Thanksgiving. We have to know how to interact with the Goyim, right? And be mashpia to them in a good way, and maybe take from them what's good, but without assimilating, right? It's the tight. That's what that wall, Galeid, represents. It's being separate, but yet that's being separate only from bad influences. But of course, there is, the integration for all that's positive, right? I'm not going to get into the Thanksgiving discuss it with your local Orthodox tribe, but it's interesting that the tight wire that we walk as American Jews is separate and yet engaged for the good. That's all represented by Galeid. Okay, so it's very apropos. This is the Parshas of Thanksgiving Day weekend. The tight wire we have to walk is Galeid of this wall. But going back to the point of, angels don't speak Aramaic because it's an inclusive language. It's inclusive, Kodesh and Chol, and angels only understand particulars. They only understand particulars. They're not inclusive entities. That's what the Maharal explains, why they don't understand Aramaic and they can't deal with Aramaic, because it's inclusive of, Kodesh and Chol, and they are very stuck in their particulars. Okay, a lot to unpack here. A lot to say over in course of this weekend, and all these divrei Torah are all for Rafua Shlema of Ariella, Rína, Bat Esther, for Rafua Shlema, Tekef Umiyah, Betושח Yisrael, Amen, Ken Yirotz.